Okay, so this is my review and my reflection on working with other providers and how that can go for midwives, and how I will kind of function as a midwife and work with other providers and what that looks like. So I am functioning off of like 36 hours of no sleep ish. I had a really, really long birth yesterday, and although I slept last night, I'm pretty exhausted today. So, but I'm trying to finish up this semester today, so here goes nothing. But the case that I just left actually is the case that I'm going to be chatting about. So we had a primate mom who had a pretty easy pregnancy, no complications. All ultrasounds and labs were very normal up until she came in for her 37-week appointment, and her blood pressure was 150 over 86, and they had typically been like very normal, like 110 over 70 or 100 over 60. Nothing of that magnitude that was high. She was having no swelling, no signs of headache, no blurry vision, no upper right quad pain, and everything had been pretty normal up until that point. So what we did was we were going to monitor her blood pressures at home and see if this was an ongoing thing or if this was a very random occurrence. So she went home and started monitoring her blood pressures, and although they were anywhere from 140 over 80 to above that, nothing that was 160 over 110, nothing that was in the critical realm. These were so outside of her normal blood pressures that we decided to send her for a round of blood work. So when we did that, we got the blood work results back, everything was fine except for her platelet count. It was 104. And for us, and the home birth community, or for my preceptor, I should say, and another midwife that I'm working with, they had always been under the assumption that anything below 110 rules someone out for home birth due to increased risk of bleeding postpartum. So we collaborated with other midwives, with other home birth midwives within the area, and there was almost all of them, or a handful of them, said that they work with their clients all the time as long as that they are around that 100 range. They were okay with having a home birth and just doing more active management in third stage of labor. So really making sure the placenta comes out, a dose of PIT immediately, and traction on the cord, like really trying to minimize any postpartum hemorrhage that could occur. So we were really excited about that. We also collaborated with another nurse midwife that worked in a hospital setting, and she said, because although what had happened was so I missed a step. What happened was her blood pressures, after we ran the blood work, returned to normal. So the only thing that we had that was really going for us was her platelet count was now kind of off, but her blood pressures were now normal. So the nurse midwife stated that although that's great and her blood pressures have returned to normal, hypertension or preeclampsia can come on very suddenly, so that we should run labs about every 3 to 4 to 5 days and see if we have any changes. So we continued to run labs. We worked really, really hard on trying to get her platelet count up through like supplements. And when we ran labs again, her platelet count dropped to 87. The next set of blood work, it dropped to, it dropped to 90. I'm sorry. So she was 104, then she dropped to 97. Then we ran our third set and she went up to 98 after she had had a ton of nutrition and making sure that her supplements and really building on making sure everything was coming back up. We ran them again and they stabilized at 98, and we were super excited. At this point, she was 41 weeks pregnant, no hypertension, no other signs of being preeclamptic. And, no protein in the urine or anything like that. So we were continuing on with a home birth with the instance of if there was anything, if there was hypertension, if there's protein in the urine with her platelet counts, that would rule her in for being preeclamptic, and we would have to go to the hospital setting. So we got a call that her membranes had ruptured at 1 a.m. And everything looked really normal. Baby was moving, clear fluids. And we said, okay, go back to sleep, and you're going to go for another set of blood work in the morning if labor doesn't start, and we'll chat from there. So she got up the next morning, went in for blood work, went about her day, kind of trying to get things started. No contractions, no labor. And we got her lab results back, and there was protein in her urine, and her platelets dropped to 82. So it was time to go in. We were all super disappointed after working with her for so many weeks to try to get things to stabilize, and which they did. They started to, and everything looked really great, but obviously there was something else going on. We had also tested for HELLP syndrome in the beginning, and there was no indication for that. So we sent her into the hospital for an induction. It was a really long induction. She was on MAG because of her being preeclamptic, and then they did 4 or 5 rounds of meso to help with her cervix softening because she was 1 centimeter when we went in. And by the time we went in, she was 41 in 6 days. So with ruptured membranes and preeclamptic. So it was not the best scenario, but the staff was amazing, and no one was super concerned about all these scenarios. Although as home birth midwives, we were like, what? So it was a really long induction. She started on PIT, and her cervix just never progressed past 6. So after multiple days, I think she was 42 and 2, she did end up having a cesarean section, and baby was born. And one of the things that was interesting while I was in the hospital was because of her platelet count, there was question on whether she could have an epidural or not due to bleeding. So because her, when she went back in, her platelets had stabilized to 97. They allowed her to get an epidural and a block for the cesarean, and she was allowed to be awake. So that was pretty amazing. But that's my reflection on working with other providers. I think it gave us more well-rounded care to be like, this is when I would send her in, and this is when I went in. The perspective of a hospital birth midwife and a home birth midwife were actually really comforting to have like more answers and more comfort to what other providers do in the home birth setting and hospital setting. So we got a lot of really, really great feedback, and I think we all learned a ton from this case.